Hello investigators, and welcome back to another investigation. And today we will be hopefully answering the question, who is Sonic's deadliest rival? Yes, not necessarily his strongest rival, but his deadliest. Lethality is what we're talking about here today, not just about raw brutal strength. Before we get to talking about that, let us set up some ground rules first. Unless it is part of their kit, no outside help. If it was part of their kit, so say if he was fighting Bayonetta, she could use her summons as part of a regular kit. But if that isn't the case, no outside help. So if it's like Eggman, he can't just call in the robots. He can bring a robot with him, like a robot suit, but he cannot just call in the Eggman fleet. Not gonna happen. 2, base forms only. No Chaos Emeralds, no Chaos Rings, no Soul Emeralds, no Precious Stones. And for all that is good and holy on Chip's green earth, may Solaris help you or have your soul be confined to the end. No super emeralds. Such a thing as cardinal sin. Now, all that being said, let us proceed with the investigation. But before we get started proper, there is at least one honorable mention that needs to be said, and that is...
My enemies always fall before me!
Blaze the Cat. I say that she's an honorable mention because they only ever really fought once in Sonic Rush, and ever since then they've been stalwart allies and good friends. Now once again have they come to blows, and always agree on everything, but they've never come to physical exchanges. Opposed to everyone else on this list who, more than once, they've come to some form of physical exchange or disagreement. But the question is she his deadliest, most lethal rival? Well, let's examine. Blaze is a princess from another dimension, cat. Obviously, her claim to fame is her pyrokinesis, which allows her to move at incredible speeds, so to break through rock, allows her to hover, and she can move so fast, averaging speed, that she can almost match Sonic in a race. But you know, speed, it being Sonic, it's a pretty big deal. I mean, they can fight, she can tag him, she can take on a somewhat serious Sonic, while he's still holding back. She is not one of his rivals in any sense of the word, like I said before. And that also means she isn't his deadliest either. For all of her power, all of her speed, and combat prowess and knowledge, she has fallen short of the mark. Now, it's no more evident than in the first game where they actually did come to blows, or afterwards, as we saw from Sonic's story, Sonic was fine after the battle, or she was too tired. It was made noted by Sonic and she agreed with him. As opposed to hers, Sonic agreed to let her fight this battle, but he was ready to go at any point in time that was necessary. And again, she is almost as fast. Like if it was on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of speed, Sonic is a perfect 10, she is like an 8.5 to a maybe a 9 when pushing it. Sonic's at 10, he is very much faster. He has to try and put an effort, but not his maximum effort. And even in the old Archie comics, and even in plenty of the IDW comics, she just doesn't have it. Case in point, when she and Amy were teaming up to get the Soul Emeralds back from the Babylon Rogues, in the Archie comics, Amy made a remark that she's just as fast as Sonic when even she admitted she isn't nearly as fast as him. And when she was trying to settle down or wrangle in, Surge on Turtle Shell Island in the IDW comics, Blaze was definitively slower than Surge the entire time. Well, way behind, lagging behind, she couldn't react to Surge in any way. Whereas Surge, in her first actual confrontation with Sonic, was reacting to him. They were fighting. Sure, he was a bit faster, but she was so comparable that it was like, oh, okay, what's the difference? And she's more comparable to Sonic than she is to Blaze. That means Blaze is that much slower than Sonic and couldn't react to Sonic if he were truly going 100% and all out. Maybe again, she has more reserves in the tank and she could do something, but at the end of the day, Blaze simply doesn't have it. Now, we do have one more honorable mention, and that would be Surge the Tenrex. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And he's an honorable mention because she's new, and we saw what she did against Blaze, but we already established Blaze wouldn't really be that good against Sonic anyway, and they're more friends regardless. They wouldn't come to blows. The reason she's an honorable mention is because she could be going a trajectory where she's just more of Sonic's like frenemy than an actual enemy. There are nefarious implications and undertones there, but I want to wait and see where things go with her before I officially say that she's a rival. But on to Surge. What does she have? Well, Surge was kidnapped by Dr. Starling along with her friend Kit, and was given cybernetic augmentations based on Power Core technology, the Metal Virus, the biodata of Sonic, Shadow, Tails, and Neo Metal Sonic. With all that, her speed is nigh even with Sonic's that we saw in the first confrontation. She was matching him beat for beat and blow for blow. Of course, he did get the upper hand, so I'll say that he is slightly faster, again on the same speed scale. I'm gonna call it the speed scaling. If Sonic is a perfect 10, she would be like a 9.8, 9.7 on the speed scaling. Almost there. But beyond speed, she has electrokinetic abilities of varying charge levels, as you could expect, to be just a small zap to more substantial bolts of power. But with all that, again, her and Sonic only clashed once in base to base, and afterward, to get the upper hand on him, Sonic had to be injured, and she needed enhancements from the Dynamo Core in order to do it. So I cannot say with any kind of confidence that she's a true rival, especially with some implication in the story that she and Kit are turning over a new leaf. With all that being said, let's get into the list proper, starting with
Stone Fists!
Knuckles the Echidna. Now before anyone gets to saying that, oh, Knuckles and Sonic are friends, they're not rivals. Remember, when Sonic and Knuckles first met, they're very much enemies. And multiple points throughout their history, they've come to blows. From Sonic 3 Knuckles to Sonic Adventure, they've come to blows, from misunderstandings to being convinced that Sonic's the enemy. They fought more than once, which I guess is another criteria, having fought Sonic more than once. So I guess maybe Surge should be on the list proper, but again, implications would say otherwise. But since Knuckles has been on for years and they're still called frenemies, I'm still going to put him as the base because of his history now that they're friends, not really rivals anymore. So he is the bottom tier. Surge, since she isn't really and anymore even frenemies, I didn't feel comfortable putting her in this position as the bottom of this list. And if the saying is true, Knuckles is as strong as Sonic is fast, this should be a rather one-sided match, correct? I mean, one hit from Knuckles is guaranteed to just KO Sonic immediately. We've seen he can make localized seismic events, from games to comic books, hits the ground, the earth quakes and huge robots just come tumbling down. He can lift huge rocks from the ground many times his own size and throw them like they're baseballs. He can glide. He is a expert fighter. Sure, he's a little bullheaded at times, but it seems to work out in his advantage. And even if he takes the beating, he's fine. We're talking about a guy who can punch so hard he makes explosions, which isn't very surprising when each one of his punches can exert at least 1 megaton's worth of force. So, I mean, that's gotta kind of be it, right? Even if we were to argue that for every like 100 of Sonic's blows, right, equals 1 of Knuckles, all Knuckles has to do is land that 1 hit and Sonic is KO'd, down for the count, correct? And he knows that esoteric echidna martial arts Sonic doesn't know about. Well, Sonic does know about that because he's fought him more than once, so he is familiar with it. And despite Knuckles' power, he hasn't really been able to get a one up on Sonic. In fact, Sonic and Knuckles, when they fought, he lost. And in Sonic Adventure, they stalemated. And again, there's the speed gap. Even with a full heat Knuckle attack, there's no guarantee he's fast enough to really tag Sonic if Sonic didn't want to be hit by him. Like, I think that in Sonic Adventure, it was more so Sonic was confused and wanting to get to the bottom of what was going on more than him actually trying to defeat Knuckles. So I'm gonna say that Knuckles isn't really his deadliest rival, despite even him being able to, in Sonic Rivals, like a fire aura. And again, hit the ground so hard with Knuckles' hammer that he stuns the other player, the other character, Sonic included, from like so far away from across the map. So again, just to reiterate, I do not think with all that we know about Knuckles is Sonic's deadliest rival. And again, they're more friends at this point than enemies, so even putting him on here is a bit contentious in and of itself. Now, since we move on from the last of the echidnas, we'll go to, I guess, where this list actually begins saying that there is rivals proper with
Now you'll see my true power!
Jet the Hawk. Yes, leader of the Babylon Rose, the master of the wind himself, is where this list truly begins to get into Sonic's actual rivals. Now, what does Jet bring to the table to say that he's a rival to legendary Blue Blur, the fastest hedgehog around? Well, on his feet, we haven't really seen much from Jet. He's claimed to be Sonic's rival is really as his skills on his extreme gear dictate. 'Cause on his extreme gear, he can somewhat keep pace with a casual Sonic. He cannot really match him in speed, and their rivalry, for the most part, really more so stems from their egos. Both of them can be rather egotistical and arrogant. Sonic's comes in the form of he thinks he can do anything, and Jet comes in the form of him believing he's the best at everything. So they're more so egos, but more than their skills. Because we've seen multiple times if they were to come to real blows, Sonic would would win outright. There wouldn't even be a real contest. Sure, he has this really cool giant fans that can make large tornadoes, gusts, and gales, or uses extreme gear to make tornadoes and fight with those, or yell really loudly at someone as he's passing by them, but there really isn't anything to say that he's any true rival to Sonic. They're just two kinda arrogant people who are being grounded by their friends and people around them, whose egos butt heads from time to time. And we see multiple different points, mostly in the comics, but when Sonic really confronts the Babylon rogues, he kind of would handle them reticently, like in the Warp Topaz incident when it was warping around after the whole Zombot incident. He confronted all three of them and he just clowned on them the entire time. All three of them together weren't really a threat to him, so Jet by himself extra isn't a threat to him. The reason why he's higher than Knuckles on this list because he is a truest sense rival rather than a friend who they kind of butt heads with on occasion. But that being said, is he Sonic's most lethal adversary, his most deadliest rival? No, he is not. Our very next suspect needs little introduction. You know him, you love him. It is...
Long time no see, Sonic. My loathsome copy.
Ah yes, Metal Sonic, the end result of the chain of mechanical Sonic doppelgangers, starting with Silver Sonic and then going to Turbo Hyper Metal Sonic, with a Mecha Sonic here and there in the middle for flavoring. Now, Turbo Hyper Metal Sonic was effectively Eggman's idea that he could build a better Sonic, and then to match him, his speed, his strength, his agility, everything. He is more of a rival, more of an enemy, but I would be remiss if I excluded him off this list. Now, is he Sonic's deadliest rival? We'll check his stats. Now, here we have the first actual rival, that's on the list proper, that puts Sonic on notice. His speed and strength are in league with Sonic's. They're on par. We've seen it multiple times. Sonic actually has to try and dodge his moves or else he's going to get tagged. He has been consistently shown to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest, of Eggman's creations of his badniks. So much so that he will just leave Metal Sonic to handle Sonic and go off and do something else at times. Like when we first encountered him, he's like, yo, go handle Sonic and Stardust Speedway. I'm gonna be over here. He trusts him that much. He has that much confidence, that much faith in his creation, his invention to match and exceed Sonic. He's tagged him more than once. He's even punched him in the face. He is the strongest badnik Eggman has to offer in his confrontations with Sonic. Unless he explicitly tries to make something powerful, but it usually comes in the form of robot suits and mech suits he can pilot. There is no individual small-scale badnik more powerful or fast as in Turbo Hyper Metal Sonic. Again, we've touched on his speed and power, but let's see what his power has to bring to offer. Obviously, he can shred through metal, stone, and being a copy of Sonic, he can spin dash as well. He can also achieve greater speed by overloading his circuits, or in a rush of golden power, unlike how the V maximum overdrive attack, or the overdrive attack for simplicity's sake. And he also has energy projection, as we've seen in Sonic 4, and as we saw from Sonic Rivals. He could also copy other people's abilities. When we get the star item in Sonic Rivals 1, or if we fill the gauge in Sonic Rivals 2, he can copy other characters' abilities. It'd be Silver's Psychic Control, Shadow's Chaos Control, Knuckles' Hammer Punch / Knuckle Slam, Rushi's Bot Attacks, Tails' Flying, but he could already fly anyway, and SBO's ability to turn invisible. So when we think about it, he's pretty well stacked and poised to be Sonic's most deadliest and probably strongest opponent. So what gives? Well, he hasn't beaten Sonic once, not even really coming close. The closest he got was as Neo Metal Sonic and as Metal Overlord, and in the comic books he's Super Neo Metal Sonic, but those are upgraded, ascended states, forms of his that we're not using here. And we're talking about base Turbo Hyper Metal Sonic with the Black Shield, with the maximum overdrive, with the copy ability, with the speed, the spin dash, the whole nine, and he's always fell short of the goal. I would have to say that Metal Sonic is not his deadliest, but he's gotten a lot closer than pretty much anyone else on this list just in base. Now here we go. For we have one of the best and effectively what everyone would consider his greatest rival. And this guy truly needs some introductions, so here you go.
This is the ultimate power.
The ultimate life form himself, Shadow the Hedgehog. Now, When talking about Sonic and Shadow, it is like talking about Naruto and Sasuke, Goku and Vegeta. The foil to the main character is equally powerful as the main character, but they have a darker outlook on the world, more cynical. They're edgier. They're willing to go places the hero isn't, and that's what Shadow is to Sonic. Shadow, by multiple different sources, is just as fast as Sonic. Just as fast. There has been some instances here and there, most notably in Sonic Colors for the DS, where Shadow disagrees with Omega's assessment that he potentially is, but every other media says no, he is, with an asterisk. Because I'm talking about Sonic and Shadow, we gotta talk about speed. So we're talking about speed. They say the primary source of his speed comes from his air shoes. Without his air shoes, he isn't as fast. Well, I disagree with that. Also because in the new Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, Wave calls his rocket shoes as nothing more than this 50-year-old ancient, skate type extreme gear. But we see Jet's board type, very modern contemporary extreme gear, lose outright to Sonic every time without any kind of reservation or hesitation. So that can't be it. The air shoes just can't be the source of 100% or at least 80% of his speed. That makes no sense. You say, it's fueled by his innate power. That's why it's better than Jet's board. He can put more force behind it by channeling into his air shoes. Maybe. We don't know that. Don't exactly know 100% how they work beyond a skate type extreme gear, but that can't be accurate because, like I just said, Jet's very advanced, very personalized board type extreme gear can't hold a candle to Sonic's speed on his feet when he actually wants to. So where does his speed come from? Well, we can actually explain that with science. See, when the air shoes expel air, which are controlled by his will, they create a cushion of air that allows him to glide above the surface. But that also means that there is less friction acting upon him, allowing him to move faster, to accelerate at higher speeds, and there's less things that can slow down and stop. And because of that, and the fact that he is actively moving his legs the entire time, he's actually, he's skating, but with air. It isn't just him using his air shoes to boost along the ground, or else he wouldn't be moving his legs. He'd be like Metal Sonic, and it's kind of boosting there. And I know, in the gameplay, Sonic Shadow Generations, and in Sonic Forces, he was doing just that. But if you look at the cutscene for Sonic X Shadow Generations, Shadow in the boost is still skating, because the entire time, every medium, be comic books, TV shows, games, up until Sonic Forces, whenever he was matching Sonic speed, he was skating, pumping his legs and moving. So his speed still comes from him. Their speed is roughly even. If you want to say that Sonic is a bit faster than Shadow, you can, but at times Shadow has been said to be faster than Sonic. It's whoever's feeling friskier that day. So in terms of speed rivals, they are actually dead even. It's been said multiple times. But what about speed? What about Shadow's other abilities? Oh, like Sonic, he can spin dash. Again, like Sonic, he can boost. He can double jump like Sonic too. Again, these two are very comparable. But what Sonic doesn't really use that much are Chaos powers. Shadow's claim to fame. He's the Chaos Power Master, as it were. Trademark, obviously, Chaos Control, Chaos Spear, Chaos Boost, Chaos Blast. And those are all very well and good. Obviously, his martial prowess is nothing to snuff at either, but nor is Sonic's. The problem is, only really contradicted earlier on, but more so confirmed now, Shadow can't really use Chaos powers without a Chaos Emerald or source of Chaos Emerald energy, artificial or otherwise nearby. Or, so they say. In Sonic X Shadow Generations, you can read Gerald's journal, and on page 10, entry number 568, goes on to explain with the experiments with the Chaos Drives and the Chaos Emeralds and infuse them into living tissue. He's referring to the Bio Lizard, how it has grown unexpectedly, uncontrollably, and his life support system is growing too rapidly. But he also says unexplained energetic reactions, and believed to be an expression of the Emerald's power. When can a living being produce such energy? Can it be controlled? And we see that the Bio Lizard can use these spheres that it can make, and these beams, and a bunch of other stuff that is happening with it. We also see in Sonic Shadow Generations, it kind of warps in. But also, what we don't see are any kind of Chaos Emeralds nearby. So, if its power is derivative of the Chaos Emeralds, and it can make energy balls and shock waves and teleport, that stands to reason that the finished product in Shadow can do the same thing. In fact, Darcy Gerald even kind of sort of alluded to that. For Shadow wears inhibitor rings to limit his awesome power. And Gerald even says to Shadow, if he removes his inhibitor ring at this point in time, towards the end of the game, he will explode for the massive influx of power, his own power plus the Doom powers. So maybe all the Doom powers we're getting from Shadow is more like another Shadow added on to Shadow, like Shadow times 2. I don't know, this is pure speculation. But it does stand to reason now, with this information being brought to light, that Shadow can in fact use some chaos powers by himself. I'm willing to say a short distance teleport or warp and a chaos spear. And maybe with enough accrued power he can enter a chaos boost. Like you have to move his inhibitor rings for that. But since we're on the subject of inhibitor rings, let's talk about his inhibitor rings. The thing that he's always constantly wearing when fighting Sonic. In saying that, he's never once removed them when fighting him. Ever. In one scene, in one game, in any medium has he removed them when fighting Sonic. Because with them removed, he can use the fullness of his strength. Again, they inhibit his power. Gerald, when he first made Shadow, made the inhibitor rings because his potential power was just too great, so it made them to keep them in check. He's never once unleashed them against Sonic. So the question is, what would happen if he unleashed all that power against Sonic? Well, we don't actually know. Closest we've ever really gotten was at the end of Shadow's story in Sonic 06, Shadow removed his inhibitor rings to fight Mephiles, after Mephiles using 2 Chaos Emeralds to power himself up and make a bunch of clones, and Shadow beat them all. Yes, Rouge and Omega were there, but you could clearly see they didn't do anything to help. They're just standing behind Shadow in his immense energy aura. And we see here he puts them back on without being any kind of noticeably tired. Now, that could just be because he thought the enemy was felt, wasn't fighting anymore, so he had to exert himself. Because in other games, it has been hinted at that he gets gas very quickly without his inhibitor rings on because nothing's keeping his power in check. But again, here he seems to be pretty okay. Then there are some gameplay examples, really only one to speak of. That is the level 3 chaos boost Shadow. When you get all the memory shards, the black one in particular allows him to use chaos boost level 3, and that seems to be the closest we're going to get to gameplay wise, having Shadow with his inhibitor rings off. And with that, he's able to match blow for blow with Mephiles the Dark, half of Solaris, and that isn't nothing. With all of that being said, Master of Chaos Control, Chaos Boost, Chaos Spears, is he Sonic's deadliest rival? No. Why? Because in most portrayals he is very physical. He's matching Sonic tit for tat, blow for blow, punch for punch, kick for kick. Because even in the Shadow Generations cutscene where Sonic and him fought, where he did lose, he only lost because he hesitated. He hung back, was about to fire a Doom Spear, and then chose not to because he wanted to fight Sonic with his own power. Because of that, Sonic got the hit he needed to win. So they're portrayed constantly as equals in like pretty much every avenue. So to say that he's his deadliest rival would also be no, he is not. Maybe one day when they fight and Shadow takes off his inhibitor rings, goes 100% against Sonic, we'll get a definitive answer to whether that would make a difference or not. Until then, but then we've gone through the enemy turned best friend. We've gone to the ego rival, the metal copy, the greatest ultimate life form. Who is left? Who is Sonic's deadliest rival? Well, according to everything this investigator has been able to find, everything that he's been able to uncover, it is none other than
I will protect the future.
That's right, the Force from the future himself, Silver T. Hedgehog. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory as to why. Telekinesis. When you can just hold your opponent in place, doesn't really matter what they can do. In fact, we saw him do that in Sonic 06, when he can afflict your mind and not even control you, but make you like weird, invert your movements and whatnot. We see that in Sonic Rivals 1 and 2, when he can use electrokinetic bursts to paralyze you. Again, Sonic 06. It's not really a contest. I'm not even talking about even the biggest uses of telekinetic power. I'm talking about on the microscopic scale or cellular scale. Like if he were to focus his telekinesis, he could just simply block an artery in Sonic's chest and have that be that. So Sonic running around trying to find out who it is, he's only hastening his own demise, and when he drops dead, Silver just walks over to him and calls it a day. When Silver can simply just, again, make him confused, and he's running around, some kind of idiot, he can simply just use a psychic energy blade, as we see from Sonic Generations, and cut him in half. I know what someone's gonna say, what about his speed? He's not as fast as Sonic. No, he isn't as fast as Sonic. But with his power set, he doesn't have to be. We see again in Sonic Generations, he thought the entirety of the stage is creating a psychic wind that is negating pretty much Sonic's speed advantage to stay ahead of Sonic, constantly pushing him back while gathering up large objects like cars, shipping containers, or the big ball of stuff at the end there, all throughout the entirety of the battle until Sonic wins. But I said, well, Sonic won. Well, if you go back to Sonic 06, in their second encounter, Silver definitively won. Shadow did not intervene, Silver Silver would have killed him. He got the drop on him, telekinetically held him in place, and that was that. If Shadow didn't intervene, Sonic would be dead right now. That is simply what it is. Now, if you want to get you talking about speed, Silver can use his telekinesis to manipulate and warp space to make a warp dash, i.e. like doing pretty much what Gojo's blue does. It constricts the space between 2 points and then just jolts him forward. Or he could just straight up teleport, as we've seen in Sonic Generations, where he just teleports about. But anyways, they're saying, but in Sonic Forces, Silver fought Infinite and lost. Then we go for the whole boss fight with Infinite and Sonic wins. Yeah, but then in the cutscene immediately after the boss fight, Sonic loses just as easily as Silver lost. Sure, Sonic did better than Silver, but he still lost, and to no detriment to Infinite, who commented that he wasn't even worth finishing off, leaving Sonic to wonder what the source of his power is. And again, we're talking about lethality, not necessarily power. Although power again does play a part. In everything at Silver's disposal, he is easily the most deadly of all of Sonic's rivals. There is no contest in that. Because where Shadow, there is a question whether he can use Chaos Control, teleport rather, without a Chaos Emerald. Silver, we've seen it, he doesn't need one, he can just do it. Sure, he can't freeze time, but he can manipulate space to that degree, giving him the mobility advantage against the teleporting spammer that is Shadow. Without a Cat, he can't teleport. And again, on mobility, he can fly, giving him the mobility advantage against Sonic. Sonic can't fly, and if they're like in a neutral flat plane area, he doesn't have the jump height enough to reach Silver without some kind of ramp. He uses speed to reach him. Silver gets high enough, uses his telekinesis, and from there can do a number of things. Crush him with rocks, again telekinetically just hold him in place, or use like Force Crush, which he can do, and there's just any number of things Silver could really just like do to him if he were to use his powers in that way, which he says again in Sonic 06. If Shadow didn't come to save Sonic, he would have been dead right there. I have to reiterate that. He would have died to Silver. Shadow, Knuckles, Blaze, Surge, Metal Sonic, Jet, none of them have been able to put Sonic near that dire point. Shadow breaks even, Knuckles is too slow, Blaze is too slow despite her pyrokinesis, Surge still doesn't have it without being amped, and Sonic being weakened. Metal Sonic again breaks even, or is in fact slower than he is. They have never put him to that point, gotten to there. Well, Silver did. Silver was going to kill him. That immediately puts him above everyone else on this list. It didn't even have to be stronger than Sonic 2. Hold him in place, about to use, I don't know, a Psychic Knife, Telekinetic Blast, any number of things. So with all that, again, I will say definitively Silver is Sonic's deadliest rival. Well, fellow investigators, what do you think? Do you think that Silver is Sonic's truest, most deadliest rival? Did I miss something? Did I overlook someone's powers and abilities? Did I forget someone? If so, please do enlighten me. Well, that is it for this investigation, investigators. And as always, have a nice evening.